A Victorian mother has become the first person jailed on a charge of
forcing her 20-year-old daughter, Rukia Haidari, into an Islamic nikah marriage in November 2019.
At what point did you realise there may be problems with the marriage?
When she said, try not to contact me again.
We were just smiling and having a laugh yesterday, and now you're down in the dumps. I said, what is wrong? And she goes, Abby, I don't want to do this no more. I said, do what? She says, Abby, I don't want to get married.
I had a call from Halimi. He says, come and get your sister's dead body. I'm going to the police station. And he hang up.
Today, I'm covering one of the most heartbreaking and significant legal cases in recent Australian history. This is the story of Rukia Haidari, a 20-year-old woman whose dreams of education and independence were crushed by cultural expectations and family pressure. More importantly, this resulted in Australia's first ever conviction for forced marriage. I mean, I'm surprised it's taken this long, setting a crucial legal precedent that will impact how the justice system handles these crimes in the future. And you know what? I'm delighted. See, I'm Pakistani, and the family I'm going to tell you about, they're of Afghan origin. I grew up in a similar culture. Why the fuck are you forcing your kids to marry? In our religion, it's completely forbidden. Where did you get this idea from? And you know, it makes me so angry, because I know a lot of you watching can't understand this phenomenon. Forced marriage, honor killings. What is this? I get it. You should be mad. You should think, what the fuck? So I'm going to try and explain it for you. Now, to understand this case, we need to first examine Australia's legal stance on forced marriage. See, the criminal code was amended in 2013 to specifically criminalize forced marriage. The maximum penalty is 7 years. This wasn't just a symbolic gesture by Parliament, as then Attorney General stated when introducing the new legislation, forced marriage places young people at risk and can result in harmful consequences, such as a restriction on autonomy and emotional and physical abuse. And in 2019, they strengthened the law even further, with amendments recognizing that vulnerable young women and girls are disproportionately affected by forced marriage, both globally and domestically. Now, the legislation acknowledges that perpetrators are often the victim's parents, its close relatives, or religious or community leaders who are in positions to exert subtle and prolonged familial, religious, and cultural pressure. And what makes forced marriage particularly insidious is that the abuse doesn't begin and end with the marriage ceremony. The marriage forms the start of a potentially unending period where much of the victim's daily experience occurs without their consent and against their will. This can include sexual assault, deprivation of liberty, physical abuse, forced pregnancy, so on and so forth. Murder in this case. But now let me explain to you the cultural significance. So, this family was from the Hazara ethnic group in Afghanistan. They are predominantly Shia Muslim. You know how in Christianity you have so many different denominations, Protestant, Catholic, Baptist, Methodist, etc. Well, in Islam you have two main denominations, Sunni, which is me, and then you have the Shia. Just so you know, Iran is predominantly Shia, and the countries surrounding it will have large Shia populations. Now, this Hazara ethnic group has specific marriage traditions that differ. You see, unrelated and unmarried young men and women have limited social interaction. One important tradition is the temporary nikah agreement. Do y'all know what a nikah is? It's okay. A nikah is the marriage contract in Islam. So if you get married, you got to have your nikah at the mosque. Like, you know how you guys go to the courthouse to sign the marriage paper? Same thing. But once you get this with this ethnic group understanding, right, it allows young people to get to know each other in a culturally appropriate way. A nikah is considered a marriage under Islamic law, but these people take the biscuit with it. Because for them, once a couple has participated in this ceremony, they may interact and communicate in ways that would otherwise be prohibited by religious law. See, their version of the nikah is they're not necessarily getting married, because you can get a temporary one or you can get a permanent one. I mean, a temporary marriage contract. You ever heard of such a thing? I'm saying this as a practicing Muslim. I bow down in obedience to God 5 times a day. But the reason why they have temporary contracts is because then it allows them to get sexually intimate. So have a look at the thinking, right? In certain cultures and society, being promiscuous is taboo, right? Even in the Western world, if a woman goes and sleeps around, it's generally frowned upon. You see what I'm saying, right? So what they've done is they thought, okay, well, I don't know if I'm going to be with this person permanently. If I sign this contract, then at least then I can have legal sex and no shame will come upon me. You understand the thinking? You get it? The problem is, if they do get a temporary one, this can have a serious consequence for the woman if the nikah ends, as a divorced woman is seen as a has-been, you know? They've lost some kind of value in the community. And if you look at Afghanistan today, the Taliban not allowing women to go to school or get an education past the age of 6 or 7. I mean, what the fuck are you doing? But this is what it is. It's a cultural thing. Like, I've never met a Muslim ever who said you can't get an education. My family in Pakistan, all the women are all university educated. It gives you an idea of what kind of background these people were from. And the ceremonies for both temporary and permanent nikahs follow similar patterns. Witnesses and family members attend. A religious leader conducts the ceremony, and the parties sign an agreement containing conditions that have been negotiated, such as, the right to divorce and will you be faithful and all that kind of stuff. And if the nikah is temporary, the duration is specified in the document. Traditionally, it's the role of the young woman's father to approve her marriage, as in the father says, yes, this boy is good enough for my daughter. Mothers may play a strong cultural role in advising or influencing their children's marriages, but they don't typically give formal permission. The new husband often provides money or like a down payment, a dowry they call it, and it's usually given to the bride. So please, let me reinforce this for you, because I know a lot of you see this happening in the East and think, what the hell are these people doing? I promise you, this is just some cultural shit that happens. This has nothing to do with religion. Now, this particular story centers around several key figures. First, there's Rukia Haidari, a 20-year-old high school student living in Shepperton, Victoria. She had dreams of pursuing higher education and establishing a career before marriage. Then there's her mother, Sakina Mohammed Jan. She was a widow who fled Afghanistan after her husband was killed by the Taliban. She arrived in Australia as a refugee in 2013. She had 5 children, with Rukia being the youngest, born just a month before Sakina's husband was murdered. This background is crucial to understanding Sakina's mindset and the cultural pressures she felt to arrange her daughter's marriage. The third key figure in this story is Muhammad Ali Halimi. He lived in Perth, but he was of Pakistani origin. And I'm not going to lie, when I take one look at this guy, I can tell he's just a wanker. See, Halimi asked his neighbor. The neighbor's name was Rukia Mukaddas. He asked the neighbor, "Can you help me find a wife?" Well, given by your hairline, I can see why you need the help. I know, I'm not one to talk. Now, this friend, Rukia Mukaddas, was a friend of the Hazara community and a friend of Sakina's. She would become the matchmaker who introduced Halimi to the family. Now, to understand Rukia's situation fully, we need to go back to when she was around 15 years old. At that time, she had been married under a temporary nikah to a man called Hussein. This engagement lasted approximately 2 years before ending in divorce. This meant that Rukia was now considered used in a sense within her community, which significantly impacted her social standing and marriageability. I fucking hate that so much, by the way. As in, like, in our culture, we care so much about what other people are going to think. You're divorced? So what? It didn't work out. I know there's more to it here. She got age 15. It's a different situation. I'm talking about the idea in general. Oh, I am now no longer marriage material. There's no marriageability. Shut the fuck up. Importantly, Rukia was happy that this first engagement had ended. She was excited about finishing school and had clear plans for her future. She didn't want to get married until she was older, hoping to pursue further study and establish a career. She specifically did not want to follow the same path as her sisters, instead wanting to expand her life choices and explore different possibilities. And this detail is crucial because it establishes that Rukia had clearly communicated her desires and her life plans. She wasn't simply a passive participant in cultural traditions. She was a young woman with specific goals and dreams that differed from traditional expectations. Now, the events that would ultimately lead to tragedy began when Rukia Mukaddas approached the family about Halimi. Mukaddas had been asked to help Halimi. His family all lived back in Pakistan, while he lived in Perth. And part of his thinking was, well, if I can marry someone who's a citizen in Australia, that could give him citizenship and then he could bring his family over. I don't know if he was a citizen or not, but if he wasn't, then that would have certainly been an incentive for him. You see what I'm saying? So Muqaddas initially approached Ruqia directly, telling her about this man who'd like to marry her. Ruqia's initial response was no. However, Muqaddas was described in court as being verbose and persevering in her communication style, and she was likely persistent in raising the potential marriage with Ruqia. After some time, perhaps worn down by Muqaddas' persistence, Ruqia told her that she could discuss the matter with her mother Sakina. But this was not an agreement to marriage, it was simply a conversation. Muqaddas then approached Sakina, describing Halimi as religious, employed in 2 jobs, and free from bad habits. Now on May the 31st, 2019, Halimi travelled from Perth to Shepparton to meet with the family. He went to Sakina's house, where Muqaddas introduced him to Sakina, Ruqia, and the rest of the family. The evidence from the trial includes a text message sent by Ruqia. She sent this to one of her family members. The message asked, "What do you think about the situation? You know, me potentially getting married to this guy." They told her, "You know what, forget about it, wait a week, think about it." This exchange is significant because it shows that Ruqia was seeking advice and support from family members, that even they recognized she needed time to consider such an important decision. Following this meeting, the family stopped involving Muqaddas in their discussions about the potential marriage. This is an important detail because it contradicts later claims that Muqaddas was pressuring the family throughout the process. So on June the 2nd, Halimi returned to Perth, but this same day would prove significant for another reason. Ruqia had a driving lesson. During her driving lesson, she told her instructor she was going to be married and that this is not what she wanted. The instructor offered to help. Ruqia declined. Approximately 1 week after the family met with Halimi, Sakina told Muqaddas that she agreed to the marriage. This decision was made without any further consultation with Ruqia. Halimi returned to Shepparton and a temporary nikah ceremony was arranged for June the 16th, 2019, to be held at Sakina's home. This ceremony was attended by around 30 people, making it a significant community event. During the ceremony, the presiding mullah asked both Ruqia and Halimi 3 standard questions: your age, whether you wish to be married, and whether this is temporary or permanent. Ruqia and Halimi signed a 1-year temporary agreement. Now, this agreement included provisions such as Ruqia would be taken care for, they'll be loyal to each other, faithful, etc., etc. They have the right to a divorce, whatever. The agreement also specified a payment of $14,000 to be paid by Halimi. And from this point forward, Ruqia and Halimi were considered engaged culturally and married under Islamic law. And the stated purpose of this temporary nikah was to enable Ruqia and Halimi to communicate and get to know each other, so they could both decide whether they wanted to proceed with a permanent marriage. After the ceremony, Halimi returned to Perth on June 19th. On June the 24th, 2019, Ruqia began driving lessons with Miss Patterson, whom she already knew. These driving lessons would become crucial evidence in the case, as they provided a window into Ruqia's true feelings about her situation. During her first lessons, Ruqia told Patterson about the engagement, explaining she didn't want to marry Halimi because he was too old and they had nothing in common. I think given his hairline, she could see what he was thinking and she was like, fuck that. Patterson described the change in Ruqia's demeanour as if her wings had been clipped. She testified that Ruqia had previously been quite excited about life, but suddenly she was facing marriage to someone she didn't know, someone she had nothing in common with, someone who she felt was too old. Ruqia explicitly asked Patterson for help. Patterson felt constrained from interfering in the matter for several reasons, including cultural sensitivity and the complexity of family dynamics. However, she encouraged Ruqia to talk to her mother about her concerns. So between June and September 2019, Ruqia had 4 lessons with Patterson, and during each of these lessons, she expressed similar feelings about not wanting the marriage, often becoming upset and crying. This pattern of behavior clearly demonstrated that Ruqia's opposition to the marriage wasn't a momentary hesitation, it wasn't just cold feet like anyone would get in a marriage, but it was a consistent and deeply held position. Now, around the same time, another member of the Hazara community, Miss Haidari, discovered that Ruqia was engaged again. Knowing about Rukia's previous engagement and divorce, Haidar approached to discuss the situation. Rukia confided in Haidar about her concerns regarding Halimi's age, the fact that she didn't know him well and that he didn't live where she was from. She also told Haidar that she had been promised she could wait to get married until after she graduated university. This detail is significant because it shows that Rukia had been given assurances about timing, and they were not honoured. Haidar suggested that Rukia should seek legal advice. Rukia refused. She also declined Haidar's offer to speak with Sakina directly or to have religious leaders intervene on her behalf. Rukia's refusal wasn't due to acceptance of the situation. She was concerned about her mother's reputation. If Haidar was to speak to her mother, Rukia is thinking, I don't want to make my mother angry. This would have been culturally inappropriate for a third party to go and speak to the mother about not having this marriage. This testimony highlights the isolation that victims of forced marriage often experience, trapped between their own desires and cultural expectations that make seeking outside help seem impossible or shameful. Now, on Wednesday, August 14th, the situation reached a critical point when Rukia spoke to a teacher at her school. This teacher's name is Miss Schofield. Rukia told her that her mother was arranging her to get married. She was upset, crying, and appeared tired and overwhelmed. Miss Schofield immediately informed Miss Young, a social worker at the school, and a meeting was arranged. On Saturday, August 17th, Halimi travelled again from Perth to Shepparton. The timing of this visit, so soon after Rukia had reached out to the school authorities, suggests that plans were accelerating despite her obvious distress. On Monday, August 19, Rukia told Miss Schofield and Miss Young Halimi had come to Shepparton over the weekend and that there was to be a promise ceremony the next day, as if they were getting married. Because remember, they had a temporary ceremony. This now felt like a permanent ceremony. The seriousness of the situation prompted the school to tell the police. So on August 20th, 2019, a meeting was arranged between Rukia, Miss Young, and officers from the federal police. This meeting is crucial in understanding both the legal framework that I spoke about in the beginning around forced marriages and the complex dynamics that makes these cases so difficult to prosecute. During this meeting, Rukia told the officers that Halimi was in Shepparton and that she had been given an ultimatum and was being advised to marry him permanently. She also revealed that a $10,000 payment had been made by Halimi to her mother, Sakina. This payment is significant because it demonstrates the transactional nature of the arrangement and the financial pressures that may have influenced the family's decision. Now, this payment isn't necessarily a transaction. In this case, it may seem like it, but I've seen some that are just like £50 or like $100, you know? It's just a gift for the wife. Rukia explained that a permanent nikah had been arranged for that very night, but after discussing the previous evening, her mother and Halimi had agreed to wait 8 months before this permanent ceremony. She expressed that she wanted to wait for that time period and believed that the promise ceremony had been called off. But she was concerned conversations were happening behind her back, suggesting she didn't trust that the delay would be honoured. The police officers offered various forms of assistance, including speaking with Sakina directly and providing emergency accommodation for Rukia. But out of fear, Rukia refused all this help. She specifically did not want her school teachers or the police to speak to her mother. This refusal is crucial to understanding the complex dynamics of forced marriage and why they are so difficult to prevent. Now, the events from August 19th to August 20th represents the climax of this story. 1 or 2 days prior to what would become the permanent ceremony, Rukia and Halimi collected Muqaddas and brought her to Sakina's home. At the house, Rukia told Muqaddas she was not happy about this permanent ceremony and she was crying. Halimi, concerned that Rukia didn't want the marriage, spoke to Sakina about the situation. What did Sakina do? Her mother, that was supposed to protect her, she said, "This will happen. I'll speak to my daughter, don't worry." And this exchange demonstrates that Halimi himself was aware Rukia didn't want it, but Sakina was going to force it through. The conversation between Rukia and her mother that followed reveals the power dynamics at play in this forced marriage. When Rukia told Sakina that she didn't want to get married, Sakina responded to her, "It's not up to you. I'm your mother. you're my daughter, I make the decisions. When Rukia continued to refuse, Sakina told her, do you think it's up to you? No matter what, you need to listen to me. I am your mother. This exchange clearly demonstrates the coercive nature of the situation and Sakina's abuse of her parental authority. The final piece of evidence about this confrontation comes from Halimi himself. He went to Rukia and he said, don't worry about me and about your mother. Do you want to marry me or not? Rukia said, I have to marry you because if I don't, then my mother will not let me live in the house. And that revealed the impossible choice Rukia faced. Submit to an unwanted marriage or lose her home, family and community support. So, despite all the assurances that this permanent ceremony would be delayed, the permanent nikah took place August 21st, just one day after Rukia had met with federal police. Sakina's son, Taki Haidari, contacted the mullah to officiate the permanent nikah, which was attended by 7 people. During this ceremony, Mullah Nuri asked the couple the same 3 questions he had asked during the temporary ceremony. Rukia stated since she and Halimi were now acquainted, she decided to get married permanently. Sakina confirmed to the mullah what her daughter had said. So this public statement, made under pressure and with limited alternatives, would later be used to suggest Rukia had consented to the marriage. You know when a bride, like when the priest says to the bride, will you take him as your husband? I do. That's the I do. The mullah or the imam says it to you, you say yes, I do, right? And then a witness or someone will confirm it. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just a normal process. But in her situation, how could she say no in that moment? You know? So then a written agreement was drafted by Mullah Nuri, which reportedly included rights for Rukia to get divorced, she'd be looked after, etc. So then the permanent nikah was complete. After the ceremony, Halimi returned to Perth and Rukia continued to live with her mother and attend high school. This arrangement would continue until her graduation. So on November the 8th, a henna night was held at the sports centre nearby. This traditional celebration was attended by 300 to 400 people. Yes, South Asian weddings are huge. The following day, the wedding celebration was held at the same venue, attended by around 500 guests. For those that don't know, when it comes to South Asian weddings, right, people take the piss. You'll first have like parties leading up to the wedding, mainly for the girls. They'll be back to back day after day leading up to the wedding. Then a day before the wedding, you'll have the henna night where they put the patterns on the hand. Then you'll have like a day where it's the woman's wedding day. Then you'll have the man's wedding day. There's variations of it, but like I said, they take the piss. Just way too many events. And these large celebrations are significant because they demonstrate the public nature of the marriage and the community investment in its success. So with all of that, again, how could she say no, right? For Rukia, these events would have made any attempt to escape the marriage even more difficult, as it would have involved public humiliation. Now following the wedding celebration, Rukia and Halimi remained in Shepparton, staying at a hotel until Rukia graduated from high school. The next day, they moved to Perth, where Rukia would be isolated from her family, friends and support network, living with a man she barely knew. So, in Perth, living as Halimi's wife, Rukia's life became increasingly restricted and controlled. The marriage that had been forced upon her became a prison from which she could not escape. A few months later, in January 2020, Halimi had been arguing with Haidari's brother on the phone. When the call ended, the unhappy newlyweds continued to fight. Rukia said to him, "Fuck off." He then grabbed a large kitchen knife, lunged at her, and severed 2 of her arteries. Apparently, he was increasingly frustrated after she repeatedly rebuffed his attempts at sexual intimacy. He also complained that she didn't cook or clean and often slept while he worked 7 days a week to support them. That's a lot of bollocks. Let me tell you why. In the Islamic culture, not this crap that I've told you about, in the actual Islamic culture, the man is the main breadwinner. It's his duty to provide. The woman does not have to work. She can if she wants, but she does not have to work. And I have to pay for her education, I have to pay for her house, and I have to provide her with whatever she wants. That's my role as a man. But how the fuck can you sit there and say, well, she didn't cook, she didn't clean, I'm the one working all day. Bitch, you know she didn't want this. You know you forced it upon her. Who do you think you are? And this is one of the reasons why I made this video, to explain this ignorance, right? Because I've seen it a lot with a lot of Pakistani men, right? or a lot of Muslim men, where they'll say, you know, my wife makes me do this and that and blah, blah, blah. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, you're not providing for her. This is the life that you chose. You can't have your cake and eat it. Like for me, I've never complained to my wife about anything regarding finances or cooking or cleaning and all that kind of stuff. I do half of it myself because I'm the head of this household. It's my job to ensure it gets taken care of properly because she's the one that's raising the children better than I ever could. Now, of course, I live in a social economic status where she doesn't need to work and I can provide for her fully. Even then, I'm still doing the dishes. Even then, I'm putting everything in the dishwasher. You see what I'm saying? These are just inclinations I have as a man to just take care of shit. So when I hear idiots like this that say, oh, she doesn't cook and clean, bitch, you wanted this. She didn't. So live with it. Now, Sakini didn't have foresight that her daughter would be murdered. And this tragic ending demonstrates the ultimate consequences that forced marriage can have. The judge in Sakina's sentencing noticed that the abusive nature of a forced marriage doesn't begin and end with the ceremony. There's a process that got it there. The marriage forms the start of a potentially unending period, where much of the victim's daily experience occurs without their consent and against their will. For Rukia, this period ended in the most tragic way possible. So following Rukia's murder, Australian Federal Police investigated the circumstances that led to this, and the investigation resulted in charges being laid. They were against Sakina Mohammed Jan for causing a person to enter a forced marriage. The case went to trial where Sakina was represented by experienced counsel and the prosecution was handled by senior counsel from the Commonwealth. The trial involved complex questions about cultural practices, family dynamics, and the definition of consent in the context of forced marriage. The jury found Sakina guilty of the charge, making this Australia's first conviction for forced marriage. This conviction was significant not just for its precedent-setting nature, but because it demonstrated that Australian courts would hold people accountable. Now, the sentencing hearing revealed the complex factors the judges had to consider. The judge had to balance the seriousness of the offence, the need for general deterrence, and Sakina's personal circumstances. The judge noted that forced marriage is inherently serious because it takes away a person's free choice. The consequences of marriage can be enormous, and in this case, it was the worst consequence. The judge also considered the rush nature of the marriage process. While the temporary nikah was supposed to last 12 months to allow the couple to get to know each other, the problem here though is that they forced the permanent ceremony 2 months later, despite assurances that the ceremony would be delayed for 8 months. It proceeded the day after Rukia met with police. So regarding Sakina's culpability, the judge accepted that she believed she was acting in her daughter's best interests according to her cultural understanding. However, the judge found that Sakina knew it was wrong to force someone to marry, as evidenced by her statements to police that both parties needed to consent. When Sakina made it clear that Rukia had to marry Halimi or leave the house, she placed way too much pressure on her daughter. I mean, what a choice! The judge rejected Sakina's claims she didn't know Rukia was unwilling to marry Halimi, finding that the evidence clearly showed Sakina was aware of her daughter's opposition. Now, the court did consider Sakina's upbringing, how she got married quite young, she had to flee Afghanistan as a refugee, Taliban murdered her husband, she didn't get no formal education, she did not speak English. And for me, with all this immigration stuff people are talking about, one thing I will say is for anyone coming to the Western world, America, Britain, Germany, the number one thing, you must learn the language. Because any society, the first thing that bonds us all together before even ideology is language. You see what I'm saying? Sakina was assessed by a forensic psychologist who found that she suffered from major depressive disorder, constantly thinking about Rukia and having nightmares about her daughter calling for help. She had difficulty sleeping, reduced appetite, and experienced deleting herself. And also, because she's a permanent resident, Sakina faced the possibility of deportation. But of course, given the situation for women in Afghanistan, deportation would constitute additional punishment and create ongoing anxiety during her sentence. The judge accepted that imprisonment would be particularly difficult for Sakina due to her lack of English and limited life experience. Her ongoing depression and grief would make any period of imprisonment more onerous. So, Sakina was sentenced to 3 years in prison, with a chance for parole after serving 12 months. This sentence reflected the serious nature of the offence. While acknowledging that Sakina was the mastermind behind all of this, the judge felt 3 years was fair. And of course, this case sends a clear message that such conduct would result in significant consequences. The judge noted that while being charged, having to endure a public trial acts as some deterrence, because in this case, the suspect would be overcome by so much shame. And by telling the public, look, you do a forced marriage, you as the parent, you're going to prison, is telling them this is unacceptable, stop doing it, I don't care about your cultural justifications, which I wholeheartedly agree. Now, you might ask yourself, well, what about Halimi? I was going to wait till the very end, because of course I'm a man and I grew up in the Pakistani culture, so I can understand his mentality. Well, I don't understand it, but I can explain it, because I fucking hate it when I read this shit. It makes me so angry, because it is so pathetic. So forgive me for my curse words, I'm just being passionate right now. See, Halimi, this is my guess, I don't know for sure, Halimi would have gone to Australia. He was seen by his family as an economic migrant. Go to Australia, make some money, send it back home. Because of course, our families in Pakistan are relatively poor. Not so much anymore, because so many of us have come over here, sent money back. That's the beauty of the dollar and the pound being so strong. So in Halimi's head, he's thinking, okay, I'm here now. That's why he's working the 2 jobs, right? So he can make as much money as he can. Now I need to get married. If he is Pakistani, my guess is he would have been a Sunni Muslim, which is what the majority of them are. So for him to go and try and marry a Shia, nothing wrong with Shias per se, I'm just saying it doesn't happen often, but it shows his insistence on getting married. Because then, again, if I'm correct in my assessment, he would get permanent residency and that's it, he's set for life. Because maybe at some point he would have to have gone back to Pakistan. His visa would have ended, whatever. So he didn't just see Halimi as someone he could have sexual relations with, he would have also seen her as a ticket to the promised land, if you like. And in hindsight, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he was Shia because he did sign the temporary marriage contract, so he probably was. But okay, you get married knowing she doesn't want you, knowing she doesn't like you, and that's the reason why she didn't cook or clean. Halima isn't one of these people that's like, no, I'm not going to do it. She didn't do it because she did not like him. So as a man, what do you do in that situation? I've been there. As a man, what do you do in that situation? I'm divorced myself. I found out my ex-wife, this is like a decade ago, was cheating on me with my best friend who just so happened to be an Afghan. Ironically, his last name was Haidari as well. Oh shit. So in that moment, what do? I'm here in America, my family's all the way back in England, what do? I can either be a pussy, right, by becoming overly emotional and physically assaulting her, or I can stand up, be a man, tell them both to fuck off and show the world who I am. And here I am. This bastard, on the other hand, became so overwhelmed by rejection. Oh, she won't have sex with me. Oh, she won't take care of me. Bitch, you're not a baby. You're far older than her. You take care of her. So he gets a knife and he stabs her. It's just pathetic. You know what? I don't have any more words to say, but I hope I explained this to you. And please, one thing I want you to take away from this is a cultural thing. This is not an Islamic thing. Tell me what you think.